Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of the Rawlings Tigers podcast. In this episode, we have Andrew Wilde of Salt Lake City. He's been with the organization for 3 years now, and he has a facility in that location and runs it with his wife, Emily Wilde. They've done a fabulous job in just their short time frame with the organization. They've gotten a lot of players to the college level. And one thing that I always look at when it comes to coaches is how are you able to take a player that you get and then get them to the next part of their journey? Is it slower? Is it faster? Are you getting more out of them? And for Andrew, he's one of those guys that gets a lot out of his players. So I hope you enjoy this conversation. If you like this conversation, please share it with somebody. That always helps us get the word out on this podcast. And please subscribe to the channel. That helps us out a lot. It gives us an idea of who's listening and what we need to work on and who we need to bring on. So again, this is Andrew Wilde of Salt Lake City, Utah.
This is a Rawlings Tigers podcast episode.
What's your philosophy on travel? Like, do you think it's a necessity or do you think it's just part of the culture right now and it's probably going to revert back to where the old days where it's you stick pretty much in like a 50 to 100 mile radius?
I wish we could. I wish we could stay close. It does cost a lot more for our parents. I think that ends up being a little bit of a financial bind on them. But I think here in Utah, we have really no choice. We want to play those good competition. We've got to go out. Ever since COVID, some of those teams are coming to Utah. So we finally have like a pathway here in Utah once a year. And we'll get some good teams that come in for that. When the 5-tool comes in, we'll get some good Colorado teams that come to us. But pretty much after those 2 tournaments a year, we have to go if we want to go play really good competition. Our competition is growing in Utah. But it's just different. It's just a different level when we get out there. And so I would hope as it builds, maybe we could stick closer to home, but I don't know.
You'd hope so with the population boom that you guys are experiencing right now in Salt Lake. I mean, you'd think that there'd be more baseball players coming into the city.
Yeah, and a bunch from California are moving in. So we're getting good athletes that are coming in here as well. The hard part is we don't have big complexes here. So you're spread out. And so when people do come, and so a lot of tournaments don't want to come for that reason as well. So even when Pathway comes, and you won't necessarily know the range of our town, but they'll have games from Heber to Provo to Bountiful kind of area, which is probably a 45-minute drive between each. It's pretty spread out because you're using high school fields. We don't have big complexes like some of these other states. Even up in Reno where we just went this weekend, it's first time playing there, but they have a complex. I think there was about 16 fields out there, all in one area. So it's really nice to go to tournaments like that. But
so would you say like the West Coast is like it's littered with talent, but the structure is just not quite there compared to like the Midwest? Because it feels like the Midwest and the East Coast to some degree is pretty well organized and structured. And you have these like super complexes inside different areas. Do you think that's like a good like take on where the landscape is on the West Coast?
I would say so. I would also say, like, for example, Arizona. I think they got so much talent there. They've got good complexes. Most of the time when we go there, we're playing on the spring training fields. So all your games are very condensed. But I also think the talent that's there, but they don't have to travel necessarily, right? They can just kind of stay in Arizona. So we go to them. Once in a while, you'll see Arizona teams kind of jump up to the biggest tournaments because they get more PG. But we don't get PG tournaments here. We don't get PBR tournaments here. And so I think it makes it hard. But yeah, I think there's enough talent spread out here. But yeah, I think that's probably a good way to say it. Probably because of complex. Because even when we go to Albuquerque, they've got nice complexes. We do not have nice complexes here. But I would probably say the closest complex. But it's St. George. Yeah, St. George has complexes, and that's 4 hours from Salt Lake, and so we go down there. But
I wonder why there hasn't been much like private equity is big right now in the Midwest and East Coast. So I wonder why like private equity hasn't hit on those different areas. Obviously, you wouldn't want to put a complex in California. I mean, ideally, you'd like to have it there, but the cost would just shoot through the roof, and it would be almost impossible to pull off. But you'd have to get government funding for that. But I mean, like a Utah or where there's plenty of land out there, like even Vegas, like there's so much land in Vegas, on the outskirts that you would think that there'd be a massive complex being built. I mean, it makes sense. Albuquerque has it, but I wonder at what point do you start seeing like the West Coast explosion, because it feels like there's just a ton of players and a ton of talent that's not tapped into from a structure standpoint, where you can start seeing like accelerated growth. Because I mean, there's not much structure to a certain degree, and majority of major leaguers or primary, like a lot of talent comes out of that West Coast area from like California, Arizona, and Nevada.
Yeah. Well, and I think in Salt Lake, we're surrounded by mountains, so the land is slim right now. But you could still go out, an hour and a half from Salt Lake, and you can find some land. So I don't know why we haven't done anything yet.
Well, you guys figured out the Olympics. You hope to figure out some youth sports.
Well, and like, of course, we're not rich enough, but that's something that we've always wanted to do, is build our own or find investors to do something like that, because I think you could bring big tournaments out here. So when COVID hit too, that was what was great, because we didn't really see a lot of California teams come to Utah before that either. But when COVID hit, we were one of the first states that were open to play baseball. And so you had a lot of California teams come, because Pathway, even Triple Crown Pathway, did not come to Utah before that, but they came here because we were the only ones that were open. And so then we saw a lot of California teams come in, Arizona teams come in, and I think it's drawn them to come here more. But because we have it's very nice fields. I mean, we got the mountain backdrops.
It's gorgeous. I mean, BYU's field is unreal.
Yeah.
Like, and now you have that backdrop. It's almost like a destination spot for. I mean, I know a Midwest team would probably travel out there just to play with that backdrop.
Yeah, and when they come out, they talk about a lot, because how BYU field looks, a lot of our high school fields are very similar to that, especially in Utah County. They're right up against the mountains and very nice, and of course that gives them things to do while they're here as well. So I think it could grow. I just don't know why we haven't yet. Of course, it's something that I would love, because we're constantly traveling. It increases our cost, of course, to play ball or to play competitive ball.
In Utah, at Salt Lake's an interesting landscape, because you're so close to warm weather. Like, you're up in the mountains, and obviously the weather's not fantastic majority of the year, from like all like in the winter months and stuff like that. But I mean, just a short drive down, you could get into the warmer months or warmer climate and play baseball. Like, how do you guys train for that? Because I mean, do you guys play in the winter? Because I know Vegas does, but do you guys play in the winter?
Most teams shut down here. We do, but we travel to Vegas. St. George has a few tournaments, because they won't get snow. They'll get a little bit of snow some mornings, it will melt by 10 a.m., so they're warm enough down in St. George that we can go play kind of there. It still gets pretty cold. But otherwise in winter, we travel. We'll go to Vegas or Arizona again. But most teams, they'll shut down, and that's another reason why we have a facility. And the facilities are starting to grow here. A couple of years ago, there weren't very many facilities. Now there's probably, 6 within probably 45 minutes of us. So they're starting to grow, because people are really understanding. We've got to be able to train at least, whether we play, we need to train in winter. Even going back to talking about the warm though, like we went to Vegas this year. We were playing in 120-degree weather in the summer when it was nice here, 95 here in Utah, but we just didn't have the big tournament. So now we're traveling to the extreme heat to play, which we didn't like either. So yeah, it's hard. But winter, like right now, the Reno tournament we went to was 28 degrees the night we were playing our 2 games. It was cold. It was miserable. We're not even that cold yet here in Utah and Salt Lake, so we could still be kind of playing. It'd be cold. We could play. But we just don't. Everything kind of shuts down. Right about now, everyone's shutting down. Teams are just going on break. Yeah.
So how do you train for that? Like for those players, like the Midwest cycle is it's pretty simple because we have 4 seasons, and it usually shuts down in October. And now it's like November right now. This is November 19th as we record, and it's going to probably be 70 degrees outside here in Missouri. That's just typical Missouri weather. But usually this is like 40 to 50 degrees. Like there's no one going to be on a field, but you guys are a little bit different because you guys could make that travel. How do you guys train for that?
That's what's also changing, like within our organization. It's changing because a lot of people are wanting to shut down because they're just used to that. And so we're trying to just change how that looks. And so we're talking a lot about keeping their arms moving. I mean, we're trying to change baseball in Utah. That's our goal. There is some other facilities. The other facilities don't run like ours. Our facility is open 24 hours a day. We let the kids have a key code on their phone. And so we have programming set up inside of there. Of course, we still run our practices. We do 3 days a week, all year long. So, and that's us coaches there running it. But then the rest of the time they can just go in and train. So, we're trying to change it. The other facilities around our valley, they don't have access like that. They'll run different camps or clinics, stuff like that. They just don't have that access. And so I think that's another reason why a lot of kids shut down too. They just don't have access. And a lot of people don't want to go pay to rent cages or whatever, So we're trying to kind of set a tone and hopefully change baseball in Utah, even if, some of our kids leave or whatever, and some of our programming kind of runs over to these other organizations. We're okay with that because at the end of the day, it just helps Utah baseball. This is kind of our plan. So, so we're kind of pushing programming. We push arm care through the whole time. We don't really let them shut their arms down. We don't really want them to shut their arms down. Mm-hmm. We of course can't do big long toss, but we've got the plyo cares and we can throw up against the walls and we do different things like that to keep moving. And then we focus on speed, agility, and we still work on our bats and all that. So we just kind of don't ever stop, if that makes sense.
I was talking to one of our alumni, Eric Miller, who's with the Giants, and I found it really interesting. He was training, and he jumped on to the WebEx interview that we were doing, and I was like, "Are you training right now?" And he goes, "Yeah, I don't take that much time off. Like if I do, it's probably like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then I'm back into the cage." And he has a specific training regimen that he goes. And probably when people listen to the interview, they're thinking, well, man, like his arm's got to be falling off. But like he kind of progresses himself in and out of those different areas. Is that kind of like what you guys do? Is you guys are progressing up towards the season and then kind of de-excelling down?
Yeah, kind of. We'll still try to do a little bit of long toss inside of the cage. I don't know if you've ever seen that. It's not as efficient.
I've done it
against the net, but we kind of just keep ours moving. But yeah, mostly we're in a recovery or a low level 70-80% type throwing, and then we'll on ramp a lot higher before the season starts. But it's hard with us in Utah as well because, and this is why I want to do things the way I'm doing it here, because our high school seasons will start and we'll still have snow. Some of our high schools will have, in the spring, they'll have,
you're good.
Some of our high schools will start high school games before they even have 1 or 2 practices outdoor. And to me, that's way more dangerous on people's arms or bodies than working throughout the whole winter. If they work through the whole winter, they're ready to go. Now, difference is we can't necessarily go do long toss, but it's kind of just crazy how our high school programs work. And it's not because of how they do it. It's just because we have snow. And so once in a while, we'll have the snow melt off and we'll be able to do tryouts for high school and we'll be able to run it normal. But the majority of years, we're running a high school tryout inside of a gym. And, you're not getting long toss there. You're not getting, on-ramped anywhere. And then pitchers are having to come out. And we've had pitcher injuries in our high school programs. Not in our Tigers, but in the state's high school programs in the first, second, third week. And then coaches are irritated. But what do you expect? They're going to come out and they're going to just start, throwing that ball as hard as they can. They want to win or they want to compete, which is good. It's what we want. But the problem is they didn't have time to on-ramp. They didn't have time to get their arms ready. So my thought process more is let's keep the arms moving. We may not be able to throw as hard, but it's still them not coming out and just throwing cold when it gets to springtime as well. And that's why we'll still try to do winter tournaments. We make them a lot of fun. We don't necessarily go out to win these tournaments. We just go out and we have a lot of fun. The kids love them. And it's just good to get out and play in the middle of the snow. When it's snowing here, we're able to get out there. But just another way to get their arms to push a little bit longer. We can do a little bit more long toss when we're out of here in January, February as well. So get them a one up on their competition.
Yeah. I don't know much about pitching. I mean, in high school, I was a pitcher, but I mean, I just threw the ball. And I had a lot of injuries in high school, but then when I got to college and professional, I just had this thought process of like what you're describing is I just need to keep my arm moving and just do something every single day. And I've noticed that it was way easier and like people don't take this as like gospel because like my body is probably completely different than your body and like each individual is different. But I always felt like I'd rather deal with dead arm than an arm actually being hurt and like sore. Like I'd rather fight through the velocity downgrade and try to work through that than dealing with being on the shelf for 2 to 3 weeks because I have a minor strain in my arm, whether that's a bicep tendon or whatever. I actually saw more velocity jumps when I worked through that dead arm than not like saying, all right, I'm gonna take a rest for 5 weeks, 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Go
ahead. Oh, sorry, man. I think that's a problem that we're seeing here with our youth. They come up and you hear so much on social media about, arm injuries, and not saying that those are false or anything, but what ends up happening is our young kids come into our program and we're like, hey, we're going to throw and we're going to work your arm and we're going to push your arm, and the moment they get sore and they don't know, especially 14 years old, 15 years old, they don't know how to differentiate between injury and just sore. And so the same thing, they'll want to do the same thing. They'll say, all right, I got to take 2 weeks off, my arm's sore. It's like, no, you just pitched, your arm's going to be sore. Now let's work through it. Let's talk about what arm pain we're having so that we can make sure that's nothing serious versus just sore. And then, I'm a big one on let's get out there tomorrow and we're not going to throw hard, but you're going to do some light catch and throw.
You're not getting back on the mound and throwing another 60 pitches. Yeah. It's not that. It's more of like, let's get the body moving and everything like that. And one of the things that we used to do in high school all the time, and I'm sure you can relate to this, is that we would always run after we threw. And I finally had a trainer in pro ball and I was like, hey, why do pitchers run after they throw? And he's like, do you want the secret? And I was like, yeah, I want the secret. He's like, it's a farce. It has nothing to do with conditioning. It has all to do with trying to get water into your body. So we need to create you to be thirsty so that you can flush out your system and flush out that lactic acid. And obviously you get the benefits of cardiovascular and all that, but like, let's be honest, you just threw a bunch of pitches, like your heart rate's already up. So, but like we just need to get more water into your system. So then I was like, so then the next day, that's why you guys run it? Like, oh yeah, obviously, like you have to get a long run in because then you get more water intake and you're ready to roll. Like, I mean, there's not many players out there that are unfit to complete a season. It's more of you need to get that body and your system flushed out so that you're able to recover a lot faster.
Yeah. And I think I think a lot of kids think recovery is also just sitting up, doing nothing, but recovery is getting your body moving again, getting the blood flow. Yeah. All that good stuff.
Yeah. And I mean, probably the best pitcher hangover is probably a protein drink and some water, to be all honest.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then a nice little walk or a jog and redo it until your arm feels pretty decent. Maybe throw the ball lightly to get back into it.
Yeah. And don't take this as scientific. I read a study once, and it's been a long time ago, but I read a study where it was talking about the correlation between your speed and your velocity as well, and your legs and your shoulders as well. So I think running also benefits their shoulders as well. But it's been a long time since I read that study. I can't even remember it all, but so it's all good. Yeah. Just keep your arms healthy. Running, I think, keeps your shoulders healthy.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of good information out there from tread and driveline that can kind of steer you in a good direction rather than going off of like myth. And I always challenge guys, like, don't take our word as gospel or any other coach's gospel, but always trying to find information that relates and finding studies that actually can prove like, hey, this is how my body works. This is how I can recover a lot faster.
100%. And I'm big on that in our program down here too. And I like to even bring in guys who's just got out of their playing days or they're in it right now, and I try to bring them to practice often so that it's like, hey, hear what they have to say. They say things different. They say things, you can learn from them. But again, I also try to teach, you've got to sift and sort because there's so much information that you try to do it all. You're just overwhelmed and some might counter or be counterproductive as well. So as an athlete, you've got to feel your body, feel what's right for you and kind of find things that click, so.
What are the things that you focus on as a coach mostly? What's
everything? Probably shouldn't, but are you talking about anything or practice?
I just mean, like, what's your priorities? Like, what's the top three? I mean, if someone just gave you that blanket statement of like, what is it that you focus on? Like, if you could label it down to 3 priorities, in a full year with a new group of players, like what is it that you really want to get the message across?
So our biggest, probably what's my number one thing would probably be, I constantly talk about raising your ceiling. We get kids in who are just going to a drop 3 for the first time, in our high school program, we have our youth teams and they'll feed into our high school program, but otherwise we're bringing kids from outside of the Tigers and they jump into our high school program and they start at 14. And that's a hard age, right? It's a hard age. They're going to the drop 3 for the first time. Some of these kids have never been coached well. And I'm not knocking on those coaches. It's just, Little League is just different. So their IQs are a little bit lower. And so to start, I talk ceiling, right? We've got to get power. We've got to get speed. We've got to get you swinging a bat. And so we talk a lot about that with velos. We work bat speed, velo. I mean, like everybody else is kind of working on it these times, but not necessarily to lose focus on the mechanical stuff as well. But we want them to be stronger, faster, swing with power, swing with explosiveness. So we probably focus on that a lot. So we use different things like overload, underload bats. We use overload baseballs and underload baseballs. So they're swinging at different size balls. They're swinging it at heavier bats, kind of that. So we go into that to try to get them, one, just moving. But we do a lot of other type explosive stuff. We jump hurdles or dot drills. We're med balls. We do a lot of med balls, just to get their bodies moving and moving efficiently and more athletically. But raising the ceiling is one, because if their ceiling is low, but they can hit, it doesn't really help them, And I think that goes back to a little difference in Utah, because you travel into Arizona and all of a sudden you see these kids have some power, and we might be able to get through a high school game without as much power as them. And you've got the kids sprinkled throughout that have the power. And so I'm all about that. At this young age, high school and even at 18U, to me, I'm like, we're getting ready for college. We're getting ready for our next steps. We've got to have some sort of power and explosiveness behind us as we get there to get us those opportunities. And so, yeah, ceiling is one. I focus a lot on IQ, situational baseball. And it's tough. They come in and it's real tough. They don't know how to cover fields. They can't necessarily execute different things like bunts, hit and runs. Those are very frustrating for our parents and our players when they come into our program, because we're big on that. Because whether we can't execute or not, I'll still call them. We practice them a lot so that opportunities open up down the road, right? We need to be that tool at the plate. And so, but even just hitting by count, right? A lot of us don't think to swing differently based on the count, based on the situation. Runner in scoring position swings look exactly the same as nobody on base swings, and to me there's differences, so we focus a lot on that. And if I had a third one, I think you could put everything that we do kind of in that nutshell. We don't focus on winning. We're big on that. And some parents hate that about me as well, but I want to develop. I want to get them playing the game the right way. I don't want to just go win ball games because we can, we learn that this defense can't field a bunt, so we're just going to bunt 5 times in a row. We could do that and potentially win games, but I don't care. I want to just teach them right, let them work things out on the field. So yeah, I would say that probably puts our program kind of in a nutshell. We have different things that we do that help these things as well. I have a lot of automatic feedback, I guess.
Mm-hmm. We
have a radar in every single one of our cages, so that when they come on their own, nobody's holding the radar. It's just up on the wall. They're mounted. So every time they hit a ball, they get to see their exit velo. We work a lot of back, just like everybody, right? We want to hit the ball to the back wall. And so the radars are set up that way. Of course, if you hit offline, the radar's not going to read as well. And so you're learning to hit that back wall by that feedback alone, just so that you can watch those exit velos and, of course, raise your ceiling as you do it.
I always feel like that's a natural progression. Is like if you lean more towards velo, you're going to naturally work on your eye-hand coordination to make sure that you strike the ball correctly. That was like my biggest bugaboo back in like the late 90s and early 2000s when I was coming through. Like it was all mechanical based, and like mechanics are great. Like don't get me wrong, like knowing mechanics can really solve a lot of issues. But one thing that does is it really prohibits that player from executing on velocity. Like I had this huge conversation with one of my guys who's going to a Division I school, and he was so worried about what his front foot was doing. And I was like, does it really matter if you strike the ball correctly? And he goes, I guess not. I was like, I could show you different major leaguers where their front foot leans in different spots at different times, and it's not exactly perfect every single time. The question is your bat in the zone, and are you swinging it hard, and is the velocity coming up? Because you're going to naturally correct. Sometimes I feel like the adults in the room speak a little bit out of turn too early, and it causes that player to focus more on making contact rather than the velocity side. But they're naturally going to come back to equilibrium. They're naturally going to come back to that middle ground that we both want, which is, am I seeing the ball correctly, and am I striking the ball correctly?
Well, and I think that's a big problem, because a lot of kids will even mishit a ball they'll get on base, and because they've been trained that getting on base is the win, which I disagree, that now they're okay with that, but then the moment you start teaching them velo and all that, now they start to actually keep their eyes on the ball. They start to barrel the ball more, hit it in the sweet spot. And now sometimes they're hitting out. When they first start that, right, they're gaining a little bit of power, and they're young, so maybe they're just hitting it straight to the outfielders and they're getting out, and it's frustrating for them as well, and I can see that. But over time, that ball's going to go to the gaps, or it's going to go over their heads, and then they're going to have a lot more success than these mishits, because the older you get too, the mishits are not they're not going to land, so
that's the difference between a soft 300 and a hard 300.
Yeah.
And when I first heard that term in college, I started like really assessing, like, did I have a soft 300 or was it a hard 300? Like, well, I got a lot of cheap hits, so it's probably not going to play at the next level, So I got to figure out my swing a little bit better, which, I mean, ultimately that's what ended up happening. I got exposed at Missouri State, and I had to figure stuff out real quick, and that's where I kind of started leaning into that velocity aspect of things and really trying to let the barrel eat,
Yeah. And I think that's why we focus so much on just why you're 18, you want to win, 18 and under, you want to win. But at the end of the day, if you can build your body up and you can be just a little bigger than the next guy, or you can, hit the ball a little harder than the next guy, or you can, run faster than the next guy, these things all end up at least giving you that opportunity. Then you can make those adjustments when you get there that you need to make that make you even better. But if you can't, now you're in a whole world of mess when you get to college, because now you're competing on every level. Like, oh my gosh, I got to get in the weight room, 6 hours a day because I'm so far behind, or I've got to learn how to hit completely different because these contact swings just aren't working, or whatever, So I think that's why
and the game's going to call for contact, like you just mentioned it, when it's like first guy on first and you're trying to get the guy over, or if you got a guy on third and obviously you want to swing hard in that position, but you're trying to get the ball in play with 2 strikes just to get a chance, So there's gonna be times where you're gonna have to lean into that contact. I just view it as like a scale rather than a black and white conversation where like you have to hit the ball. You have to hit the ball every single time that you see it out of that pitcher's hand. Like, I just don't think that's a great approach overall.
Yeah, I think my approach, and we talk about this a lot here, is be aggressive, learn how to be aggressive consistently, and then it's easy to back that off. But it's hard to be, not aggressive and then all of a sudden just raise it up to aggression, if that makes sense. So I was like, we're going to learn how to be aggressive constantly, and then we're going to learn how to, back it off. And then same if coaches in the future. So one of our approaches in the plate is we swing early. We don't like you to miss the first good pitch. And I call it good pitch for a reason, because I don't care if some guys are like, well, I'm only hunting the fastball. Some guys are like, I don't care. So we talk a lot about zone hunting. What is good pitch for you? Good pitch for you is something you can hit hard. And so a lot of people hate that. They're like, well, why are we doing that? If we swing and miss on that first good pitch, now we're behind in the count, blah, blah, blah. Well, at the end of the day, I'm like, it's a very aggressive approach. If you get to a college and they're like, hey, we're going to watch till you get a first strike, it's very easy to do that. But if you get to a college and they're very aggressive and they're like, you got to be ready for that pitch, you're already there. You don't have to try to rise to that challenge. You've already learned how to do that the last couple of years, So that's more of my approach as well.
How do you feel about taking the first pitch, whether that's like late in the game or early in the game? What's your philosophy on that?
I've gone back and forth through the years. I'm big on not taking the first pitch. It depends on the situation. It depends on the game. It depends on the pitcher. If we're starting to chase a lot because the pitcher might be fast, but he's not accurate, I'll back it off a little bit and say, no, we're watching. That's harder to do for some kids as they're learning my approach. But what I've learned over the years is, you used to be like, all right, we're going to take the first good pitch. We're going to let their pitch counts go up high. We're going to get this pitcher off the mound by inning number 4, right? That's kind of how we used to think, or how I used to think. And that's not a bad strategy. There's a lot of different ways to look at the game. But what I've learned, they're just going to bring in the next dude. They're stacked with dudes, right? That's just how it is these days. So coaches don't necessarily play it on, get that first guy off the mound and you're going to come up with a guy who we can hit better. It's not necessarily that way anymore. So to me, I'm like, let's just go. Let's punch it. I don't care if this guy stays on the whole game. If we can start punching his first good pitches, it's going to make him have to work around us. And now he's going to start throwing, he's not going to throw strikes anyway, right? And if we can learn how to zone hunt and we're not chasing outside of the zone, his pitch counts are going to go up naturally that way. Or we're just going to hit him hard. We're going to put the pressure on the defense and we're going to, score runs with him and keep him on. I don't care. Keep him on or change him. Doesn't matter. So I'm not a big watch the first strike. I'm a big let's be aggressive and let's learn how to hit it. And if you look at the percentages of barreling the ball on that first good pitch, it's slim. But we focus on it in the cages as well. And so some of our teams are really good at it, and we put a lot of runs on teams by doing that. Some of our teams, we still miss hit a lot with those because we're learning that skill. And so I don't know. It's a good balance. Like it could go either way. I've kind of just stuck to my approach the last few years, and I like it. I like where it teaches these kids and where it goes. And then if they swing and miss at the first one, they've got something to time up the next one. They've got some information, instead of just watching that first good pitch go by. And then what I've learned in the high school age is a lot of times they're still thinking about that pitch. What's into the rest of their at-bat? And they're like, man, I should have swung at that, or I should have, or whatever. And I think it affects the rest of their at-bat. So
yeah, I've been telling my guys recently in the last 2 to 3 years, like, think about the mistakes that you make in the box. Now, think about the mistake that pitcher's going to make when he's throwing to you specifically. More than likely, he's probably going to make 2 mistakes, maybe 3, if you're lucky in that at bat. Whether that's just a missed pitch that's going to be a ball, or he ends up leaving it just a little bit over the plate, because they're thinking in areas, they're not thinking in exact spots. And sometimes players think like, oh, the pitcher's throwing it to the exact spot of the outside corner, so I'm just going to go to his strength. And more than likely, that's they're not going to hit that spot. So there's going to be a mistake. And it could be a fastball, it could be a curveball, it could be a changeup, but you've got to be ready for it. And it feels like when players understand, like, oh, if I missed that mistake, I at least have 2 more, possibly 2 more. I know I have 1 more for sure. And then obviously as you get to college and to pro ball, those mistakes become a little bit slimmer and slimmer and slimmer. And obviously when you get to the World Series, every single pitch is like dynamite. So it's like, we're hoping for what I hope that I get the mistake, not somebody else.
Yeah, 100%.
Because those pitchers, I mean, they're young pups. They're just throwing. They don't know where it's going half the time.
Yeah, the command is not there. Yeah.
100%. So what are you guys working on right now in Salt Lake? What are you guys working on with your players? That you're excited about?
So what's just getting the program rolling. We're on our year 3. Mm-hmm. And when people came in, having a program was like they just didn't understand it. Because a lot of high schools don't, right? They don't have routines of what you should do before you pitch, or pregame. They just didn't have that stuff. And so it was hard to get them to buy in. They love to come and use the facility, and they love to kind of, mess with some of the stuff that we had going. Year 2 got a lot better, right? It was mostly the older kids, like, okay. And that usually started happening because the college coaches would start talking to them and be like, hey, I need this. I need you to have more velo on your arm, or I need you to have this. And now they start like, okay, now I see what coach is doing over here. Like he's got these things set up for me specifically because this is what colleges are asking for. And so now we're on like year 3 or 3.5. I don't even know how long it's been since we've had the facility, but it's like 3.5. And now you're getting more of the kids like, okay, we're really starting to see this. So this winter will be a bigger push on making sure that everyone's kind of buying in. And there's a hard balance with what we do because we are supplemental. don't coach the high school team and them. I coach them outside of their high schools, if that makes sense. And so it's hard because they're trying to be coachable on their high school coaches, and they're trying to be coachable over here. And it's a hard balance for them. I think in Utah, parents and players haven't really understood the importance of club ball yet, and why we do club ball, why we have programming, why we go out of state to play. Some teams don't ever go out of state to play. Some teams just stay local and they think it's good enough. And they just haven't understood that you've got to go and compete at higher levels, because those are who you're going to be competing with when you get to college. And so I think this year it's good. We're putting some different things in place where, like with the 14s and 15s, because they would come in and they'd practice all with my high schools. What's 14 to 18? We practice together, and it's good. In my mind, I have the 18s helping the youngers, and it's really a good dynamic. And our high schools are going to do the same. But now with this one, because we're getting more buy-in, we're gonna have a class just for those 14 and 15s to really make sure that they're understanding what we're doing, why we're doing it, instead of just trying to follow the older kids. And so we're just kind of doing that. But I think we're going to focus more on numbers as well. We track everything. We track their numbers. Even when we do stuff like broad jumps, we're tracking it, we're charting it, dot drills. I mean, we're charting everything. When we med ball throw, we'll radar the med ball throws just so that they kind of know they're growing. And so I think that's going to be our main focus this year, is just getting more of that buy-in.
Are high school coaches open the club, or are they kind of fighting on it a little bit?
It's it's probably a 50-50. Some coaches hate it. They say, just stick with us. And I don't know how it is.
I always feel like that's such a, what's from my side of things here in St. Louis, and I see my players, I want them to go to baseball schools. Obviously education's super important, but if you can have both, that'd be awesome, because I know there's some really good high school developers, and those high school developers, the top ones, they're all in on clubs too, because they know that I don't have to do as much work.
Yeah.
And I'm the same way. It's I know that I don't have to do much work, because this kid is he's going to have the resources to end up getting the knowledge that they want. And there's some coaches that are they want to be super dogmatic about things, where it's it's my way or the highway. And I always think that's the worst way of handling education standpoint, because you want people to grab information from all over the place, and then they decipher it, and then they can make the best decision on themselves. And at the end of the day, what's the end goal? The end goal is to win ball games, right? So, and obviously player development, but with players develop, you're going to win ball games. Yeah. It baffles me when clubs are against high schools and high schools are against clubs. It's just a.
Yeah. It's so hard, because too, if you can go then reiterate the situational play, and then they're doing it here, they're just going to get that much better at it. Situational play, hard. It's hard. Baseball's hard. It's a hard sport. And so, I am that way. We always support our high schools. We're never going to say you have to be here over your high school. We tell all of our players, and that's how we talk, we're a supplemental to your high school program, because we also know that a lot of our high schools don't have a program out here. They're just playing baseball. And that drives me a little bit nuts too. And so part of me is also hoping that those high schools will start to see, you're throwing pile balls when you come here, where we don't even know what that is, or we're not doing any of that. And they'll see those certain Tigers kids who are doing it. We have one of our high schools here last year, 7, 8 of the 9 starters were Tigers, and it made it for that head coach's job real easy, because he wasn't really coaching. He didn't really do much. And they won a lot of ball games because of that. And so, and he's supportive. We have a lot of kids on that high school in our program. But we've also had other high schools where they tell us, they've sent letters to their whole team saying, no outside clubs, no outside facilities even. And that drives me nuts, because I'm like, these kids are missing opportunities. Unless you're going to have your cages open every day, why wouldn't you want them in a cage? Why wouldn't you want them doing bullpens?
As a coach, it comes down, one of the best pieces of advice I got from my college coach. He's like, "Oh, are you getting into coaching?" I was like, "Yeah, I really want to pursue it." And he goes, you want my best piece of advice? I was like, yeah. I was like thinking he's gonna come up with like, oh, you have to do this with player development. You gotta do that, this, that. And he goes, recruit the best players and then don't mess them up.
Yeah.
And this is coming from an historic coach that had unbelievable players, like Ryan Howard played for him, Ross Detweiler, like the list goes on.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, like, this guy's all about player development. But he just gave me a piece of advice of just recruit the best players and then don't mess them up. And that means that most coaches, if they really label it down to it, they don't want to do the heavy lift. Yeah. They want players that are able to decipher information extremely fast, and they want players that are really good at baseball. And if they have to do the heavy lift, they will. But in all honesty, like, I'd rather just be able to plug and play than give them my little spices that'll be able to enhance it and play into the scheme that I'm trying to accomplish for that season.
Or give me the wins, whereas I didn't necessarily build them up to get those.
Yeah, it's like, and I'd be the first person if I had a player that is now a T-Snapper. We just did an alumni interview with him, and I maybe gave him what's probably 5 to 10% of the information that he needed, but he was coached by a coach down in Springfield, Missouri, who's a AAA coach for at the time for the Texas Rangers, and he taught him everything. But I'm not going to take credit for that. I really don't care to take credit for it.
Yeah.
All I care about is, like, are you good at baseball? And are you a good human being? Will you plug into the team culture? Well, let's go ride, because I love winning, you love winning, and I want to see everyone that be successful. So, like, why would I want to take the credit for that?
Yeah. 100%. Yeah, I think everyone, and I don't know if I can't say everyone, but especially out here, it's who gets the credit, right? Like,
it's like
the Tigers. Yeah, a guy will be in the Tigers and they'll commit to a college, and the coach is irritated at their high school, and it's like, if you want to take the credit, take it. I don't care. We want these kids to have opportunity and move on. And I think too that's also what bothers me in this time. And I can't say this time because we always wanted to win, but it's changed because now you have so much social media influence where it's like, if you don't win, you suck. If you don't win, you're not good. But then,
that's true.
But then people want the development too. And it's like, well, you can't have both always at the same time, right? We can help develop those great kids to be a little bit better, but the ones who aren't winning ball games, they're the ones that need the development. So if you never pick those kids up, and I'm big on that out here, and I don't care what other organizations think. There's organizations out here who will recruit the best of the best. No, I don't care. You want to learn? Yeah, you buy into my culture. You want to work hard? Let's go. Let's teach you some baseball. Let's hopefully give you an opportunity. Again, it's still up to the kid, right? It's up to the kid to work hard. And I even say the kids that I brought from nothing to something, I still don't take all that credit, because that kid has to put in that time and work. And, it's just a little bit of influence is all we are as coaches, and the players, they got to work. So,
yeah, if you winning and player development is a scale, and it's on a linear scale here to the far right or far left, and if you go too far right to the winning side, if you want to win, I could definitely figure out some ways to win. Yeah. But at the end of the day, are you going to learn anything? Probably not. And I can go complete player development and get your brains beat in, and you're going to lose like 25-0. But I'm not going to get that satisfaction of how you feel like, I feel accomplished. So it's going to go on deaf ears. So I want to try to get more into that middle side, maybe be a little bit more on the right side at times, or maybe more on the left side at times. Yeah. I feel like how you're describing it, a lot of the culture side of baseball is they're either too far right or too far left. It's going to be somewhere in that middle.
Yeah. And even here, I've got to find a better balance in that too, because, man, I'm all for the underdog. I'm all for that. And I've got to be able to sometimes be like, hey, you know what? You're not close enough. And I need to not, bring those kids even on. I need to be like, no, but it's hard. That is my weak. That's my weak spot. My weak spot is if you want to learn, let's learn. But they're too far on that other end where they need too much development. They've lost, So
yeah, it's almost like they need to get their reps in. a different location and get back, and then hopefully be able to come back. Like I used to be that way where it was like I could take anybody and turn them into something, and I feel like that was me personally, not talking about you, but just like I felt like I was being a little bit too arrogant, and it really got noticeable when I was like, you know what, like there's some players that are really hating life right now because they're just getting their brains beat in because we have to play at this competition because I have this player on my team. And then I started realizing like I need to place the players exactly where they are at that specific time at that spot. And I think that's the same thing with recruiting is like some players want the D1 dream so bad, but they don't understand like that at that right now, your skill level in the marketplace does not fit at that level. It could in the future, definitely could. Not gonna throw that away, but our goal as an organization is to spot you up correctly because we want to make sure that one, you have a successful career, but two, that guy is going to come back to me. That college coach is going to come back to me and be like, hey, this kid can't play. Like, what the hell, man? Like, why'd you talk him up?
100%. Yeah, 100%.
And then it just ruins my credibility, and then I look like the idiot.
Yeah. 100%. Yep. 100%. Yeah. Yeah. I'm getting better at that too. I don't feel like I'm too like I'm not saying that it was bad of you to say that, but I'm not feeling that arrogant side. I just hate being the guy who's like, like I'm the guy who could ever say you're the guy that's not good enough. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
You don't know what the kid can. You never know where the kid's going to turn up if they get the let opportunity. But at the same time, I'm with you because, we have some kids on our team, on a couple of our teams where, they don't put the same effort. And even though I'm giving them a shot and they're low level, they're not necessarily working hard to get better. So it does affect the whole team, and it's not fair to them either. And I'm seeing that as well. So it's just that learning too that we've got to do as coaches. We're not just teaching learning on the side of the athlete. We're constantly learning as coaches and being better. And if we're not, then what are we teaching, right? We're not teaching them anything. So I'm big on that and finding different ways. What's adjusting?
Well, this has been an awesome conversation. I want to continue this in the future because I think there's some more stuff that we could talk about that would be very applicable across the United States inside Tigerland. But I really appreciate you opening up and sharing your thoughts and ideas around coaching.
Yeah, well, I'm happy you do these because I like to hear what other people are doing. I mean, again, the more people you can bring in with good ideas or how they do things or the frustrations even, to me, that just help all of us. And again, we're here to help the kids. And the more we can be better ourselves, the kids get better. So I appreciate that you do this. So whether I could be an addition to anybody else's thoughts, who knows? But I learned from a lot of your podcasts. So keep it up.
I appreciate it.
Yep.
Thank you.